Joining us now. Oh, it's too much fun here in the swamp. Meantime, Chris Collins doing a little, he made a phone call, but he needs to resign. Like, saved his son $570,000 by tipping him off. Excuse me, Chris, it's called insider trading. Do we have laws against that? I don't know. Must be me, right? I can't figure any of these people out here in the swamp. Joining us now, David Botkins. He's the Director of Media Relations and Communications for Dominion Energy. Basically, he's their chief spokesperson. David, great to have you.
John, good morning. It's great to be with you. I love hearing that weather forecast. You know, it immediately gets nicer out when you read that. It's amazing how that works.
I know, isn't it? And no rain. The past, 60 days here, it's rained every single day. No rain today, which is pretty good. Just in time for you to come on. So, look, I want to know about this rebate. I'm excited about it. If you're a Dominion Energy Power customer, you're going to get money off your bill in August. How does this work, David?
Well, the way it works is because policymakers in the General Assembly approved the Grid Transformation and Security Act. It became law on July the 1st. It passed overwhelmingly by the General Assembly, signed by the governor. And a component of that legislation was that the corporate tax cuts, the federal tax cuts from the Trump administration, were mandated to flow back directly to customers this summer. And we followed that with some rate refunds of our own. So there's a couple of $100 million that's making its way back to customers this summer on their bill at the time when the bills are their highest. So you may see a $40 or $50 credit on your bill this summer. And if you combine that with cutting the thermostat back a little bit and turning the lights off, you can save some big bucks on your electric bill.
Beyond the rebate that is coming up is the fact that Dominion Energy, their grid transformation program, what you're saying is it's paving the way for Virginia's energy future with 3,000 megawatts of new solar and wind planned by 2022. Now, obviously, solar and wind can't provide 100% of everybody's energy. We know that. But what is this grid transformation do? Explain this to our listeners. What does the grid transformation do with integrating the solar and the wind, and how does that change things for just energy consumers going forward? How does this work, David?
Right. Well, the Grid Transformation and Security Act in general was landmark public policy legislation that was overwhelmingly supported by the General Assembly and signed by the governor. It had numerous stakeholders that supported it, everything from pro-business coalitions to environmental groups. I mean, the League of Conservation Voters was behind this legislation. And what it does is call for a strengthening of the electric grid to reduce outages, and that'll come with technology and other physical improvements. It calls for a smarter electric grid so that we'll be able to detect outages when they occur and get lights back on in a quicker way. And it calls for a greener electric grid, meaning there'll be more renewable energy, such as solar and wind, brought on to displace aging coal plants and other forms of energy that are less efficient. As you know, we've got a couple of nuclear power stations in Virginia. Those are the real backbone and workhorse, as well as natural gas. But we're moving more and more towards green renewable energy, and the Grid Transformation and Security Act, which is public policy legislation, is the great enabler and facilitator of allowing us to make that come true. And that's why the announcement that we had last week about offshore wind was so exciting, because the Grid Transformation and Security Act declared offshore wind to be in the public interest, which sends a signal to the State Corporation Commission that they should strongly consider approving it going forward.
I think anybody looks at this, obviously, going forward, you want to see solar and wind and other forms of new renewable energy integrated into the grid in a cost-efficient manner, because anything that could offset some of the fossil fuel-based energy we have is a good thing. The problem is you can't sustain it 100% or 50%. But, I mean, even if you're getting 7 or 8 or 9% or 5%, it's 5% less coal that you have to use or something else, right? I mean, isn't that how this works?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, carbon regulation where we have to comply with, more restrictive carbon rules is not going anywhere anytime soon. So we We want to have a cleaner environment, a greener environment, and you do that with adding renewable energy onto the grid. But really, it's a balance, John. You know, at Dominion Energy, we're committed to keeping the lights on 24/7. We have the occasional outage or the hurricane we have to deal with, but you know, we've got to keep the lights on, and we want to do it in an environmentally sensitive and friendly way. So having more renewables is certainly part of that overall mix, and more solar, and now the exciting wind opportunity is going to add to that. So we're looking forward to the job creation and the tax base and the other benefits that this is going to have for everybody.
How does it affect jobs? When you talk about increasing the percentage of solar and wind and renewables, how does that impact jobs, David Botkins?
Well, these solar and wind farms are massive infrastructure projects. They're not as complex as building a gas-fired power station or a nuclear power plant, but building a significantly large acreage solar farm and installing the equipment and the substation and all the panels that have to be in place creates hundreds and hundreds of jobs of building these solar farms. The wind project is going to be a massive job creator, too, because getting these 550, 600 feet tall wind turbines out into the Atlantic Ocean, you know, the barges, the supply chain, the vendors, all the work that's going to be required to make that come true will bring a lot of new jobs to the Hampton Roads area. And wherever we're building solar farms, obviously that's creating jobs in those areas. And it increases the tax base where the facilities are located for that local government. So everybody wins. We get a cleaner and a greener energy supply. We get jobs created, and we're increasing the tax base. So that's a win for everybody. You're
on the John Frederick Radio Network, Trucking the Truth Across America. We're with David Botkins. He's the chief spokesperson for Dominion Energy, based in Richmond, Virginia. Talk a little bit about Southeast Virginia and Hampton Roads and how this might affect that particular region more than, say, Southwest Virginia.
Well, the offshore wind industry is very, I won't say it's non-existent, because there is a small wind farm off the coast of Rhode Island. It's only about 7 miles off their coast. It's referred to as Block Island. But for Hampton Roads, when we get this project underway with the assistance of our contractor, Ørsted Energy out of Denmark, and all of the supply chain that will be developed as a result of this, I think it's just going to be huge. I mean, the governor was at the announcement on Friday, along with our executives and lots of local officials. I think everybody down there is excited about what it means, particularly the port of Virginia. You know, when they bring all the equipment in on barges through the port of Virginia in Norfolk and Portsmouth, it's just going to really be a big deal. And I know that Senator Wagner's excited about it, and Mayor Kenny Alexander, and everybody else is looking forward to what it could mean.
You know, you look at Dominion Energy, there was a big debate last year, David, in the General Assembly about the deal that was made back with McAuliffe, et cetera. But this new grid that the governor signed the other day, that Ralph Northam signed, this new grid, how does this affect an everyday consumer? Like, for the layman out there, there's a lot of big words and a big acronym, GRTS. But for the consumer of Dominion Power, what does this new grid mean?
Well, what it means is low, stable rates, affordable energy, number one. Number two, it means less power outages over time. Businesses and homeowners appreciate that and know how important it is. It means a more secure grid, so that cyber attacks and physical attacks against our grid structure by our enemies out there that would do the United States and Virginia harm, the grid will be more resilient and stronger and less prone to being attacked. That's as we get all these things in place. Obviously, we're in the very beginning stages of it. We just filed with the State Corporation Commission asking for the prudency review for many of these things. So there'll be a lot of discussion and debate as our plans unfold further. But what it means for customers is savings more secure grid, and greener energy in the future.
So the Grid Transformation and Security Act, which is what it is actually called, so that everybody knows, this includes provisions for $200 million in bill credits to customers. That's you and I listening right now, and $125 million in annual rate cuts due to tax relief from President Trump's tax cuts. So that's a $325 million combined. It also is modernizing the energy grid to improve reliability, resiliency, and the ability to integrate more renewable energy, as we've talked about, with emerging technology, significantly expanding the company's renewable energy fleet in Virginia, and future testing of wind turbines off the coast of Virginia Beach, which impacts Southeast Virginia, which is where I live. So you've got basically here grid upgrade. You've got a tax cut that the president signed into law, which is affecting $125 million. You've got transformation to more output for solar and wind, renewable energy. Those people that are complaining about Dominion Energy, what are they complaining about? I don't get it.
Well, I'm not sure what they're complaining about. You know, everybody's got to have a dragon to slay or a bad guy to kick around, and I guess we're just a convenient target. But the reality is you've got to have electricity. I mean, we're not charging our iPhones or our laptops with candles, John. We're charging them with electricity. And you've got to have safe, affordable, reliable, dependable, secure electricity, and it's our mission to provide that every day as safely and as affordably as possible. And this legislation is only going to make that better. So policymakers did Virginia a favor. We're going to be acting on it, and Virginia will benefit from it immensely.
And David, walk us through when this bill was proposed and now signed by Governor Ralph Northam, was signed into law and it's taken effect. Give us a flavor of the bipartisan nature of this bill.
Yeah, the legislation had Democratic and Republican support both in the Senate and on the House side. It was one of the most widely debated policy issues of this session, in the 18 session. We had, at last count, I think 17 or 18 various stakeholder groups that spoke publicly in favor of the bill, ranging from the League of Conservation Voters, the National Defense League, our National Defense Resource Council, the Chamber of Commerce, lots of groups that wouldn't necessarily otherwise be aligned did get aligned behind this legislation, and it was very interesting to watch. And of course, the governor brokered the compromise at the end that everybody was able to get behind, and his leadership and the leadership of the folks in the Senate and the House really made it all possible. So sometimes, you know, policy and what's good for everybody has to rise above partisanship, and I certainly think that's what this legislation was all about.
Hey, look, I don't think there's any question about it because you had bipartisan support. You got Governor Ralph Northam to sign it really without any major changes. I mean, he liked what he saw, and you had both Senate leaders behind it. You had a lot of Democratic support and Republican support in the House. And so, look, when I look at one of these things and you see that level of bipartisan backing, and look, you know, there's always going to be some lawmakers upset with something that anybody does, right? Nothing's 100%. But for this level of bipartisan support that came for this, I think Virginians are better off today than they were before this was passed, no question about it. And just for the safety of the grid issue alone, I think it was major. Plus, we're getting a windfall. And, you know, for the people who say you got the two extremes, you got the far right, for some reason, try to tell me wind isn't any good, solar is any good, is too expensive. Okay, well, you have to integrate it in, okay? I mean, you have to integrate it into your system. And then you got the other end, you know, the far left basically saying you can't have any energy that's, you know, coal-based or fracking or fossil fuel. Well, then you wouldn't be able to drive your car or heat your home. So that doesn't make any sense. So don't you agree, David, we have these two extremes. Neither of them make any real sense. Moderates and reasonable people came together and passed a bill that I think benefits everybody. Am I framing this accurately, David?
You are indeed, John. You're framing it very accurately. We'll always have extremes, I think, on most public policy issues, but at Dominion, we've got to provide electricity for everybody, even the extremes. And we're doing that with an all-of-the-above strategy. We've still got coal. We're still going to have it. We've still got natural gas. We're still going to have it. We've got to keep the lights on 24/7. And the sun doesn't always shine and the wind doesn't always blow, but when it does, we're going to be in a position to harvest the power of those natural resources for the good of Virginia, and that's what the Grid Transformation and Security Act is allowing us to do, and that's why it's a good thing for Virginia.
David Botkins, we're out of time. Thank you for explaining that. I really appreciate it. Congratulations to our governor, Ralph Northam, for signing this, and I think it benefits everybody. It's a great compromise. And look, whenever you make a great compromise, somebody's always mad. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a great compromise. This is a great compromise bill. Thank you for sharing this with us. David Botkins, Chief Spokesperson for Dominion Energy. We really appreciate you.